you know, like real issues. Do you ever just get like, can we just actually talk about issues instead of, I don't even want to talk about Stormy. I don't want to talk about hush payments. You know, I don't want to talk about election deniers. I don't want to talk about January the 6th. You ever just get mentally, first of all, it might be good for your job, but you ever just like, can we just talk about issues?
All right, guys, so we got to talk about this interesting interaction with Charles Barkley on their new failing show with Gayle King. They had on Maggie Haberman, a New York Times columnist / CNN analysis / Trump deranged individual. Now, of course, they want to ask her questions like as to why they keep talking about Donald Trump and all these things when we need to be talking about real issues like crime, illegals, where the country's going, etc. But obviously, they can't really talk about their issues, otherwise they wouldn't necessarily have a job. They would essentially be MAGA supporters. Take a look.
Very effective, and we are seeing it play out on multiple levels. So I'm not sure that he will have to navigate multiple trials. He has the one, and that is going to be a lot, but that is still going to be done, we expect, by June.
Do you ever just get sick and tired of being sick and tired? And like,
I get tired a lot.
No, because elections are supposed to be like, well, let's talk about inflation. Let's talk about immigration. Let's talk about what happened in Hawaii with the fires and everything. You know, like real issues. Do you ever just get like, can we just actually talk about issues instead of, I don't even want to talk about Stormy. I don't want to talk about hush payments. You know, I don't want to talk about election deniers. I don't want to talk about January the 6th. You ever just get mentally, first of all, it might be good for your job, but you ever just like, can we just talk about issues?
Well, my personal thing is that folks in my life want to talk about politics as their side game, and that's all I do all day long. So for me, that's never.
She has to only talk about biased issues, biased politics, when it's not really the issue. When Joe Biden said, "You ain't black if you don't vote for me," that's racist, isn't it? You would think they would have buried his butt and he wouldn't have won the election, but that's not what happened. They sat here and cheered him on like, yeah, we ain't black if we don't vote for Joe, even though he incarcerated significant amount of blacks, browns, all these individuals with the 94 Crown Bill, and still he wants to get in front of a camera and say stuff like this. But no, Donald Trump is issue. Because why? Because we have a Trump derangement syndrome, and we can't talk about nothing else, otherwise our viewership numbers will go in the toilet. That's why they got to keep talking about Trump. They know it.
For a break, when people think that that's my side conversation. Look, this is an election that we have never seen anything like this before. We have a former president on trial for the first time, criminally indicted for the first time. And so it's a remarkable moment in history. And we are all covering something that is historic. But it is a very, very bracing moment for the country. There is no question.
But even his court cases, Maggie, he seems to turn those into election opportunities.
He sees them as campaign events. He treats them as campaign events. And now it's going to be harder to do, I think, in this one, just FYI.
What we always hear about Donald Trump is that he really cares about his money and his finances, and they seem to be in jeopardy. Do you have any idea how much he's really worth? You know, at first it was, a billionaire, and now
Yeah, so you see that there. Charles Barkley talked to this New York columnist as to why she continues to have this Trump derangement syndrome, even though he himself has this same issue when it comes to talk about these things with Donald Trump. The 91 felony indictments, phony, all this stuff. When people don't really care about Stormy Daniels, January 6th, when these people, they themselves turn a blind eye to political violence, right? The Antifa riots, BLM riots, the now Palestinian riots. When they see this stuff happening on TV, they don't care. Oh, it's peaceful rioting. It looks mostly peaceful. Standing in front of a burning building. They don't talk about it. They just see it in front of their face and they're like, nah, that's cool. This is all in the name of democracy. We need to have these riots. They needed to have that liquor from the liquor store. So otherwise, why would they rob it? When they keep turning a blind eye on real things that Americans want to talk about and hear stuff about, then they continue to prop up and parrot this idea that, hey, Joe Biden is great for the country, and Trump is a Hitler. He's essentially a Nazi. These MAGA supporters are right-wing terrorists. That's what these people want to parrot and talk about all the time and turn a blind eye on the real issues. And people are saying, hey, we're tired of this. We don't want to hear this nonsense. We want to hear about real issues, the immigration issue, the Israeli-Palestine issue. We want to hear about why we keep sending all this money, these billions and billions of dollars to foreign nations, when we need to be putting that money in America, fixing all these dang rundown cities overrun by violence. Black and brown community is getting destroyed by this illegal immigration over there in New York City, attacking cops, these immigrants don't get thrown in jail. They don't do nothing about them. But hey, Trump is a problem, right? So I want to go ahead and play another clip of Charles Barkley because he went on a Stephen A. Smith show and he basically asked the same question as to why we're not talking about the real issues here and why all these illegals run around beating up cops and etc. And the problem is they talk about this, then they would have to talk about Joe Biden because he is essentially that reason for why the downfall of the American society is happening. Take a look.
If you come in these stores robbing people, number one, it's open season on your ass, but also if we catch you, you're going to jail. Yeah. You know, I've been coming up here to New York to do this show for like the last couple months, and like and
you see the streets. You see the streets in New York.
3 weeks ago on TV, they had these migrants. First of all, the border is a joke. The border is a joke. Yeah. But they had these migrants, they call them, had just bust up in New York. They got them on camera kicking and beating like cops. They beat up these
two cops, beating up two cops, beating up two police officers
but they were,
in the subway station.
They were out of jail in 24 hours, and the next day,
actually, it was the same day, Charles.
But 2 days later, they called them robbing Macy's. I'm like,
wow.
First of all, they beat up cops. How are you out of jail in 24 hours? And then clearly, 2 days later, they're robbing Macy's. Anybody, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or dog, or cat, or puppy, you know that's wrong, period.
But it's woke culture. But with woke culture and everything else that's been going on, you've got folks on the left that have endorsed a more lenient legal system, and obviously folks on the right going crazy about it and calling for law and order. Who do you side with, considering our iniquitous history, what's going on today, and who the candidates are in terms of Biden and Trump, in all likelihood, running for office? What do you do, Charles? Who do you vote for?
First of all, we need law and order, Stephen A. If we're gonna,
I agree.
I'm with you, dude. We need law and order. Hey, trying to fix inequalities has nothing to do with letting people go in stores and rob people. That has nothing to do. That has nothing to do with diversity or handling inequalities. Letting random people just run in all these stores stealing stuff, and because innocent people, they should always be protected. But we need law and order. Yeah, do we need to address diversity and inequalities? 100%. But to go out here and says, like this, that's my personal favorite. Unless you steal $1,000, we're not going to press charges. Well, Stephen A., I want that same damn deal. I want to be able.
How about the $53 million in prepaid credit cards for migrants?
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I mean, come on, man. And
Black folks been in the streets, Latinos been in the streets, homeless. Minorities have been in the streets, homeless, starving for years. We ain't never got anything like that. I grew up on welfare. What they talking about? I'm like, we ain't never had nothing like that.
They think we're gonna find $53 million. I'm like, damn, we can do a lot with $53 million. I mean, but man, that's why I say this whole thing is broken, and we need some adults to come and say, hey, listen, I understand some things, but yeah, we're not gonna not gonna let everybody run wild and do what the hell they want to do. I mean, because that's just not right. I mean, it's just not right, and it's just not fair.
So if that's the case,
yeah. So now you heard that, right? Charles Barkley is basically a hypocrite because he wants to go on with Stephen A. Smith and all these other CNN panelists with Gayle King, etc., Maggie Haberman, and talk like, hey, why we keep talking about Trump? What about all those other issues? People going and beating cops up in New York, robbing Macy's. But if the problem is, if they talk about why this is happening, why society is accepting this, then they got to talk about the Democrat policies and Joe Biden. Then they got to talk about them and then lose their job. You know what I'm saying? They ain't going to be on ESPN. There ain't going to be no Stephen A. Smith show with Gayle King. He ain't going to have that. They're going to pull the rug right from underneath him because that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear you talk about stuff that makes nonsense. Doesn't make any sense at all. The complete opposite of sense. Coherent speech is not part of Democrat society. You have to say, well, why do people keep stealing stuff? How did they get locked up? Why are they getting let out 24 hours later? Well, because you guys voted them in. You know what I'm saying? If you want to do something about it, talking about it isn't doing something about it. You got to go to the ballot booth and vote these people out. You vote someone in who has common sense, who wants to do something about these thugs out on the streets rioting and stealing stuff from the liquor stores. These illegal immigrants out there attacking cops. You could do something about it, but the only way you can do something about it is not voting Democrat. That's basically the only thing you can do, Charles Barkley, Stephen A. Smith, is not vote for these people and use your platform for something better than talking about, oh, boo-hoo, whining, crying, and do something about the violence and everyone's robbing Macy's. And why the law ain't holding these people accountable? Well, because it's not the law enforcement. They want to hold people accountable, but they just can't. They literally cannot do the job because Democrats don't tell them to use their job. Otherwise, they get in trouble. They get thrown in jail. They themselves. Because when the law is too much on these minority communities, it's racism, right? You know what I'm saying? Am I wrong here? Y'all let me know what y'all think about this in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, the best review. See you on the next one.